السادة الحضور
The attendees, welcome everyone to the 12th session, Post-War Gaza, Security and Governance Challenges. I would like, first of all, to introduce the guests, Dr. Abdelmonaim Saeed, the chairman of the Advisory Council of the Egyptian Center for Strategic Studies, Dr. Zaid Ayadat, professor of political science and international relations at the University of Jordan, and Dr. Mohammed Al-Masri, president of the Palestinian Center for Strategic Studies and Research in Ramallah. Welcome, everyone. To talk about Gaza and the Palestinian issue is usually complex, difficult, and this is a session that comes later after lunch, but I promise you, if we interact with each other, this will be a very good session without too much pressure. I will start with you, Dr. Mohammed Al-Masri. As you come from Ramallah, we would like to understand, to take the pulse for the Palestinian Authority. How do you see the situation in Gaza? Where is it heading in terms of security and governance? Palestinian Authority, would it have worked in Gaza? Good evening, and I would like to thank Dr. Ibtisam and Emirates Policy Center, and thank the leadership of the country. To answer the question about the war in Gaza, my family asked me, when will the war end? The war did not end. The war of starvation, the war of the need of shortage of humanitarian aid, there are still strikes. The war in Gaza would not end unless there is a complete cessation of war and withdrawal of occupation forces. What is happening in Palestine? There is a role of the Palestinian Authority. In Gaza, yes, there is a role of the Palestinian Authority. Maybe the summit or the present Trump would not be very interesting for Palestinians, but it does exist, and in Gaza, with through the passports and education and water and electricity, these things the Palestinian Authority has been providing. There are around 9,700 from security personnel who are still there, and but many of them still cannot work. They're still training, whether they take training courses in Egypt or in Jordan. And it's not a coincidence that I am sitting here between our neighbors. They are closer to us geographically and politically. But I think as Palestinians, we can, through the dynamics of reality, to achieve what we can do through this experience, and this experience would fail if not everyone is involved. And we heard from the leadership of Jordan who said that they will not be engaged in the forces in Gaza as there is no clarity in the project. And also for Egypt, the Minister of Foreign Affairs said that they will not participate in with the security forces unless there is clarity in the plan. And yesterday, and heard from Dr. Anwar Gargash, who is a prominent politician, represent the UAE. He said there will not be security forces, and the role of UAE will be limited to humanitarian role. And then the news that we are getting now, the paper presented to the Security Council, there was some amendments, some positive aspects where the Palestinian and the Arabs are making some request to have the United Nations and UNRWA, which they were trying before they were trying to eliminate. And as Palestinians, we aim to have this protection from the Arab world that will be based on active countries on the Palestinian issue, those countries that support Palestinian and which say that without a Palestinian Authority, it will not be possible for any Arab state to work in in this place, and even at the legitimate level for the Palestinian Authority, they should be the one asking United Nations to send security forces. This is important because without legitimate cover from the Palestinian Authority, Palestinian will consider that forces as force of occupation, and we hope that there will be forces of peace that will support Palestinian during the stabilization and to ensure peace between Palestinians and Israel. So Palestinian Authority wants peace and governance and ally on Arab states, and the pressure from United States at the Security Council, the resolution of Security Council that will define the roles of peace forces that will be sent. And let's move now to Egypt, Dr. Monaim. The role of Egypt was important to reach ceasefire or to stop deportation, and even at the time being where we will see who will be ruling Gaza and how will that happen. How do you look at it? How does Cairo look at it? Are we on the right path to end this crisis and to secure Gaza and to have really an authority that will not be limited to one entity? I think we are not going on the path that's 100% sure, but it's the only option, because the cornerstones of the current initiative is the one of the President Trump from the US. I haven't known at any time at the conflict, Palestinian and Israeli conflict, there has been nothing achieved without intervention of the US. To leverage this situation is important, and he has managed at Sharm el-Sheikh conference to stop the war, and it is indeed a genocidal war, and the parties committed many crimes. I do not support what happened on October 7th. I consider that as a terrorist attack, but the reaction was a genocidal act. And the colleagues from Israel who spoke before us, they spoke and said that Israel has become isolated because of that. Israel is working on that because this is the fifth war of Gaza. We have experiences from other 4 wars, so it's almost the same scenario, but with this scenario, this is lasting for 2 years. The other scenarios, it used to be 2 weeks, 6 weeks for each of those wars. But there were tragedies like launching missiles. The first step succeeded. There was an agreement from both parties to the initiative. The first step, the ceasefire. Now we are working on the second step, which is what they call it, the disarming Hamas. I want to remind you that, and this was mentioned in the previous panel, that the regional approach is important. So it's not only Egypt. The colleagues from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, there are 12 Arab states. There are no militias, no civil war. There is specific visions for future and based on development, prosperity, and they need regional stability. Lack of regional stability has always its sources. It's that we had a source from the militia made by Iran, and they have a source of Israel. Israel is also moved, but what we can call the Jewish brothers compared to the Muslim brotherhood that we have. And it is a country different from Gorion or Ishaq Rabin. Now we have Smotrich and Netanyahu, who talks honestly at the United Nations about the big Israel. In the previous session did not mention Israel as a nuclear country. Israel is a nuclear state with borders with us, and the settlement issue, if we go back to Oslo Agreement, this was one of the things where there was radicalists and extremists from Israel who were against the peace. So the regional whole, if Israel is a psychological issue, it's not an issue of power. And since we have here the other party at the conference, the source of the Arab nationalism, and it's the anti-colonialism. Unfortunately, Israel came at the end of colonialism era. And I am aware that the Jewish nationalism is also anti-Semitist. So to understand that the idea of sanction with the preponderance of arms becomes always a big massacre. If we say that Egypt, when Egypt started peace under al-Sadat, it did not change its course. It knows its limits, and 1948 will not repeat itself for Egypt. That's why it's put in all its weight, because it's the first country that made peace, and also it accepts negotiations. And there was success in the previous 4 wars, and I think this will not change. If you allow me, Dr. Abdelmonem, if you spoke about the regional role, not only Egypt, just a small detail, because the countries that convinced the President Trump in New York to start this step and to go to Sharm el-Sheikh and to stop the killings, there was also Pakistan, Turkey, and others. When they meet again in Istanbul, Cairo was not there. And talking about Turkish forces going there was taking place beyond the regional framework, because the regional world can lose because of different interests. So is there a consensus for the post-war in Gaza and security and governance between all these states? I think it's the people at stakes. There are stakes. There are stakes also in the Arab states who were engaged in war with Israel, and who this country is now. We have 12 Arab states, and some Arab states, unfortunately, with the militia, non-state actors, they played a role, starting from Somalia, Syria, Iraq. There are operations that took place, but I'm talking about 12 states, 6 Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the most prominent one, or at, let's say, the biggest in terms of space, and also geopolitical issue here between the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. And I want to say that the Arab states, particularly Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Qatar acts as a mediator, as everyone knows. They got support. Saudi Arabia was pushing for recognition of Palestinian state, and UAE provided support to the brothers in Gaza. And in Egypt, we have the main store there. I will take your answer is that the Arab states agree on that, and let everyone understand the answer. Dr. Zaid, Jordan is engaged from the beginning in the Palestinian cause and played a major role. the fact that it was not announced early that Jordanian forces will not join the stabilization forces in Gaza, and why is there some sensitivity between what is happening in Amman and what is happening in Gaza? First of all, good evening, and thank you, Dr. Ibtisam, for inviting me. If you want to talk in English, it's fine because we have translation. And normally I was supposed to talk in English, but you pushed me to speak in Arabic. So the fact that you feel that there is a gap between us in Jordan and Gaza, this is a feeling, but we're giving our analysis, and I give my analysis, but if you want official position, you have His Excellency, the ambassador, who can give it to you. Let's mention 3 points regarding the Jordanian position in terms of analysis. Jordan, like Egypt and other Arab states, that the ceasefire that took place in Sharm el-Sheikh is not the best thing that could happen, but this is what we could get. But as a result, till now, it leads at the case of no war, no peace. And by nature, this is threatening peace and stability in the region. The second point is that there is a lack of trust historically, and even if there are agreements on many things that may seem beneficial and excellent, but the lack of trust of the continuation or the fulfilling by the government of Israel of the commitment is a problem. Third point, the framework for the participation of forces is covered with some legal glitches, because there is no legal reference for that. And even talking about the formation of stability forces doesn't mean anything, because we don't know how it will be formed and who will be participating when those forces go there, what will be their mandate, and what will be the litigation measures in case there are some problems, and what their oaths, how can is it them who will disarm in Gaza, and to whom will they give those weapons, and many other questions. That's why in the 20-point plan of Trump, by design, they are vague and lack operational detail. It's a question of first phase, second phase. It was created like that, and it's so vague, and we cannot implement it unless we divide it into phases. And the first phase is important for Israel. The first thing is the exchange of hostages, and this led to Israel withdraw from 47% of Gaza. My question, why not 50%? So what is the strategic value and the military meaning of this number and the yellow line and the possibility of division of Gaza? All these questions, and we still did not cover a main issue, which is the sequencing. What will happen first? Should we build border peace and the presidents of Trump, and should it be ISF? On which basis? And who will participate? And therefore, the Arab forces together, they would say, as long as there is no legal benchmark designated by the Security Council or with invitation from the Palestinian Authority with a clear mandate, and then it will do something clear, which is called peacekeeping and not peace enforcement. So I will stop here, but I can continue later. We can talk later about the role of Hamas. And I mentioned there is a gap between Jordan and this plan, and not between Jordan and Gaza. And so because we cannot deny the role of Jordan in terms of aid. Dr. Mohammed, I would like to ask you here about the issue of Hamas and the yellow line. What does it mean for us that Hamas now, as they say, they started negotiations with the Palestinian Authority and with Fatah, and they have meeting in Egypt? What's the role that we can expect from Hamas, since according to the agreement, Hamas agreed to hand over their weapons, and who will also have the mandate to do that, and to whom those arms will be given? So how do you see the possibility of having disarmament of Hamas? Who will do that? And this yellow line, would it remain like new borders for Gaza? Let me mention a point mentioned by Dr. Zaid about the entry of forces as armed forces, given the confusion by the international resolution, and even with the reference of these forces will be presenting its report to the Security Council. But as Palestinian, we consider Jordan as a partner, particularly in main issues, meaning that the final decision, such as water, borders, refugees, and holy places, longest borders in the Arab world, with occupying force, refugee, the biggest number we have in Egypt, and water is in the sea and the Jordan River, and they said they are partners. So we are proud of this position. We want to be the partners, and we don't want an independent decision. But for Gaza and those arms, historically, they have arms. Even before 1947, a Palestinian citizen would have a weapon at home. Are we talking about individual weapons, or are we talking about missiles? As Palestinian, we don't want to have weapons in Gaza or other places than Gaza. I'm talking about weapons that will pose a danger to Palestinian society or the neighboring states. And this is what the president is asking for. I think that the issue of weapons was not put on the negotiation table, and Hamas, they gave a promise that they will hand over their arms, and when Witkoff met Khalil al-Hayya, he promised that they will hand over weapons, but that will be in an orderly manner. It will be not disarming, but it will be freezing the arms. It will be handing over weapons to a specific entity, and the experience by the British, like it happened with the Irish army, it was a failed experience because it's a different conflict, and they merged with the political entity. Now what is required is disarming and expelling Hamas from Gaza, and also to have a force that's not even Palestinian. And as Palestinian, we can say that Hamas will not be in the political landscape, and we agree on that. And the 22 states signed the New York Declaration for the recognition of Palestine, and they were signed by Turkey and Qatar. The second point about weapons, it was raised in Cairo discussion, and with Hussein al-Sheikh, the vice president, and Majid Faj, minister of intelligence, and they said, tell us how can you hand over the weapons to the Palestinian Authority? And they said they can hand over to a committee from the Palestinian Authority, and Egypt, they will take care of this issue. And the next phase, we don't want to focus on the weapons, but to focus more on governance in Gaza. Last thing, I want to tell you that nobody needs to Gaza to rule us. we want someone to come to Gaza to serve us. I am from Gaza, from Beit Hanun. I can't imagine someone coming from outside the Gaza just to rule us if he's not coming to support us, to give us humanitarian aid, and with the after 737 days of genocide. If we go with the scenario of handing over weapons, what will Hamas look like? Would it be like a political party, or what? The weapons with the militia after October 7 did not meet the needs of defending the people of the region, neither in Syria nor in Lebanon or Palestine. And those weapons with symbolism mean that there is a right of resistance, and the faction that met in Cairo, they approved that there is a popular resistance, and this is a Palestinian decision, popular resistance, and Abu Mazen adds to that peaceful resistance. Gaza, some people like to call it as the backyard of Egypt, even from security perspective. It's important for Egypt, has been part of Palestine as Arab state. And dealing with Hamas for them is important. Why there is I don't know how to describe it, but in Egypt, they want to have international forces for peacekeeping, but not for enforcing law. And does that mean Hamas, as I understood, what is the difference for Egypt for the whole of those forces, particularly in disarming Hamas? What happened is, to what extent the forces will be, but it is certain that we are in a transitional phase, and Hamas took advantage that there was a ceasefire, and then President Trump said they need to ensure security in the markets, and then they started executing all their adversaries. Hamas, I can call it as a specific Nakba for Palestine. But in Palestine, if you look, you will find that in Palestine, Egyptian map, you will find that Gaza is on the top. And the tragedy has all the roots that will not go back to the reasons and what happened and who was behind that. But I want to say that we have main problematic with the expelling the people. Egypt has 15 million refugees, and we have become 125 million because we have 15 million refugees. 2 million extra are not going to pose a problem, and this is what President Trump thought about. But neither Israel nor the U.S. should impose on a sovereign state to accept expelling people against their will. So this issue, the whole world has seen it. Even the Jews saw it historically in the many massacres and the Holocaust that was linked to immigration. What happened during the war was imitation of some of things that happened in the Nazist colonies. That was the first war that we had. That was the first war that we have seen on TV in that horrific manner. There is a call for for the Israeli people to choose in the way that we are following, and then they will wage a war every 2 years. But to go back to your question about the force, I know that people are interested in this, and this is very technical. There is there are generals and diplomats in Egypt who would like to answer all these questions about the numbers of those forces and what they will do exactly. The second mission is to move to a phase of recovery, to be able to give a minimum of shelter to our brothers in Palestine, so that we can move to the next phases of reconstruction. Egypt is prepared for that. They proposed that to the Americans, and Witkoff found something important in that proposal, and I can say simply that those forces, they can protect the process in a land that's still a source of concern, and police forces, they need some training, and we're talking about 7,000 police forces in Gaza and the West Bank need the training. The second thing, we need an agreement with Israel on that forces. So when there is an agreement on the yellow line, I don't know what will be the colors of those lines, but if at each stage Israel will have to withdraw to another line, maybe blue color. So cooperation with Israel geopolitically and geostrategically is important. But here, to think in a positive way, Egypt wants United Nations professional people will work on that. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Defense will work on that. They will work on the technicalities of this issue, and they will draw them on other experiences. Mr. Mohammed, I will come back to you. Did I understand well? If the resolution of Security Council about those forces, this is technical question. They will be enforcing the law, and they will be in charge of disarming Gaza. This will eliminate the need of Palestinian police force and will impact Palestine force.
Of course, this force needs to be a peacekeeping, not peace imposition force. And if it was decided to impose peace, that means that it would be a setback from what we've been discussing, because this would not be the same that President Trump wants, but there would be some amendments that give some margin of movement for the Palestinian Authority. But if it was imposition of peace, you will not see any Arab country entering Gaza. Would Hamas voluntarily give up its weapons to the force? We are talking about the resolution. The issue of arms is a different one. The issue of Hamas, Dr. Zaid, the issue of Hamas has a confusion between resistance and and being a proxy for Iran, because decisions in that case would not be national but would be influenced by Iran, as well as separation attempts, because it was not a state thinking, it was a sub-state issue. Would Hamas easily be absent from the scene? What can the international community do to treat Hamas and deal with it as a reality in Gaza? In the outset, it's not easy for Hamas to leave the scene. Hamas actually controls the scene since 2005. This is its fifth war. Full devastation of Gaza, and practically the loss of futures of generations of Palestinians. The question is Hamas going to leave the scene? And what Hamas is doing is adaptive strategies, socially, economically, and military strategies. And there are some attempts in the region, and I believe they are serious, that are related to requalifying Hamas somehow, which means the discussions between Palestinian factions, in addition to Hamas, to decide which Palestinian commission would be governing in Gaza with the participation of Hamas. So what does it mean for Hamas to participate in nominating an entity or a committee that governs or rules Gaza in the future? Why is Hamas actually participating in that? It would give it some kind of contribution. The current situation and the game that is being played is done within two key contexts. The first one is that a 2-year war when resulted into winners and losers. Winners have the right to impose whatever they want for their own interest, as with every war in the world, and this is something that we need to not forget. The other side is that the signing of the agreement with all its details came after another ascending path from July to September was going on, which was the path for the two-state solution and the Palestinian state. But after the Saudi-French initiative, the talk is only on ceasefire. Of course, it's critically important and to find or to attempt to find some kind of formula to have an order and law and governance in Gaza. And even discussion in this part is limited to weapons, international forces, without any mention of the civic governance in Gaza. Now we are asking who is ruling Gaza right now, who is managing schools or hospitals or streets and villages in Gaza right now. These daily civic life details, who's in charge of it? These armed groups that have been spreading in Gaza, what are they doing and for whom are they working and what's their future? All this leads us to another topic. There is a huge gap between expectations, international and regional expectations, between the agreement and the reality. There is an actual vacuum in authority and power, and this is a conducive environment for violence. And when you have these adaptive strategies, there are always options to reshape and redefine yourself. It's not an option for Hamas to be either military or political. It's also an adaptive strategy for the socialization and the social life in the future and its details. The other crisis is that neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority nor Israel nor the Arab countries nor the international community have trust in one single player or power that would be ruling Gaza. This is called the commitment problem in the international interrelations science. When you lose confidence in any party to keep peace, you will have a crisis on how to create an alternative who would either serve your interest or collectively serve everyone. My last point is that we have to look at this in entirety. I have some concepts that could be potential scenarios of what would happen in Gaza. I will mention that in the end. But for us not to leave the Israelis out of the equation, I agree with Dr. Saeed. Of course, the problem started with Hamas. We all agree. But since then, Israel has been conducting policies that are endangering the region. All policies of Israel are endangering the whole region, not just Gaza. The policy limitations of Israel's policy in Gaza are regional strategic limitations. The issue is not just Gaza. The war in Gaza is not just Gaza. It's far beyond Gaza. And the settlement in Gaza today is also beyond Gaza. It is related to the regional situation. So this is a strategic issue by nature, which weakens the strategic value of Gaza. Israel has explicitly succeeded in creating unnecessary enemies and embarrassing all its friends. This region is now a hostage to the wishes and concerns of Israelis over their security on the account and expense of everyone else, because the Israeli policy that has been adopted is the arrogance of power. Dr. Muhammad, we are back to talking about weapons. This will be a quick question to you all before we open the floor to questions. If the demand is to have international peacekeeping forces and that law enforcement will be done by a Palestinian government and the Palestinian police is there, this could be comfortable for Hamas, which would keep delaying the handover of weapons and think that it will repeat what it did in 2006 and 7, etc. How can the authority force Hamas to hand over its weapons without any pressure? Because the Palestinian police is not an actual or a significant pressure over Hamas forces in Gaza, even if they were 4,000 policemen. This is not the only barrier in Gaza. It's probably the easiest one, because this has become an issue that's agreed upon internally among the Palestinian factions, where the weapons are handed over and probably suspended by a trusted side. It could be agreed with a country such as Egypt or others. So why is this now being emphasized in the Israeli media, such as the talk on tunnels? Tunnels are not only a danger that threatens Israel, it also threatens Palestinians. Can Gaza be rebuilt in high standing buildings over lands or tunnels that are dug very deep in the ground? There are several areas that have these tunnels. When Israelis tried to drown these tunnels, geologists found that this is a disaster for Israel and for Gaza and for the whole region, and this is why they gave up. Even if Hamas says that they want to close the tunnels, it would take 1 or 2 decades in order to regain the soil and its quality. Of course, we have to solve all the internal issues. We have everyone pushing toward this. Hamas is right now not in a position to reject handing over the weapons, because the demand in Gaza, as I said, the demand is to stop the war, and the war will not be stopped by Netanyahu and its right-wing government unless there was a force in Gaza that says we will be filling the gap in Gaza. And I believe that the Palestinian Authority is just a part, not all the security and governance in Gaza. It's part of the solution. But Mr. Trump has to give Arabs who were very friendly with him and met with him, 8 countries. They were ready or expressed their readiness for security and governance in Gaza, but without a vision that takes this region away from the solution. How can you rebuild a land without the owner of the land? It doesn't mention Hamas or the Palestinian authorities and even Abu Shabab. In reports now, Trump is not talking about the legitimacy of these Palestinian parties. You said that Trump has to involve Arabs. Do you think that Arabs managed to solve the disagreement between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority? They brought Fatah and Hamas to Mecca to agree, but it didn't work. So we cannot bet on a force that could not unify Palestinians, where Iran managed to penetrate Hamas. And and many countries bet on Hamas despite their clear project. Probably I know Hamas better than anyone. I am from Gaza. I was the head of intelligence before I came here. But I am telling you, I know them very well. Even Ismail Haniya said that we will leave the government, but we will not leave the ruling. But what is the option if we reach the Oslo agreement with Israelis? Can I not agree with Palestinians how to live in Gaza? This would be a Palestinian problem. I will not discuss this extensively. However, I mean that we are able to reach Palestinian agreements within the elections that will happen after 1 year. Dr. Abdelmenam Said, we talked about Hamas, and we can see that there are at least two directions. One is with the Brotherhood, and Khalid Mash'al represented, and also the Sinwar direction, which is closer to Iran, and problems have emerged recently. If we assume that Hamas will be requalified, as Dr. Zaid says, and they agree to hand over their weapon, do you believe that they would need another sponsor or supporter again? Because we can see there is disagreement in the region on how to deal with Hamas, because Egypt, which is the country that meets with Hamas more than any other country, but it is committed that the PA is the only legitimate representative of Gaza and Palestine, while other countries such as Turkey and others meet Hamas leaders and other levels. Therefore, I believe there will be attempts. There would be attempts to take Hamas to another sponsor other than Iran, but this will keep Hamas part of another country that's external, not the internal interest of Palestinians. You can have a very pessimistic scenario where things happen catastrophically, but now I am talking now in order to put everything in the extreme scenario. Some people are trained. Until now, you are negotiating with the Palestinian Authority as one of the Palestinian forces that cannot be ignored. But people of Gaza, when they have something really clear related to peace and going back to the legitimate authority of Palestine, and that there will be forces protecting the people, and Israel says that it will not be creating greater Israel. When you have all this, the legitimacy of Hamas will diminish it completely, and it's almost being illegitimized from any type of resistance or any type of governance. Right now, we are trying to heal a disease that happened on October 7th with huge international repercussions in all aspects. We have a deep wound with all sides and parties, with the U.S. and Egypt and the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and many other countries attempting to reach this point through convention. Hamas was reluctant and had two directions. It was reluctant to not accept because one of the extreme sides saw that as a surrender. And also the issue of the yellow line. We had a lot of agreements in 1974, but people in Egypt said that these will be the final Israeli lines, and Israelis will not occupy anything beyond those lines. But tradition and history show a lot of momentum that we can mention in greatest crises. What I'm saying is that as Arabs and as a regional power, we are providing this historical choice not only for the Palestinian people to have an independent, dignified, and free state, while the Israeli side is also integrated in the region without talking about reshaping the region. Talk about being a great regional power, this would be a historical mistake that might result into other repercussions. Words are very sensitive in this region, and when we were talking about peace, we thought there would be an ultimate and final solution of the Palestinian issue, but this final solution word is really painful for the other side. So I want to say that words always have a meaning, and each side has to be careful about what they say. Before starting the questions, in 2 minutes, Dr. Zaid, I want you to talk about the extremism and Hamas, and it seems that the region is limited or still under the religious extremism, whether the Israeli right extremists or the Islamism and the Shia extremism, Shia and their parties and the Hezbollah and other extremist religious movements. Does this create balance, or does it feed each other? Therefore, when Hamas is diminished or changed, there needs to be the same change with other parties and similar movements. Of course, the extremism feeds on each other. This is a political sociology rule, and over the past decades, we saw that the religious extremism in Sunni Islamism, such as Hamas in Gaza, has always been a source of power for Netanyahu and the extremist government, and vice versa. But could there be transformations, major transformations of ideologies? Of course there can be, and this happened with the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda and others. So transformation is a nature of humans, but when and how does this happen, and under what circumstances? And if we can bet on that in this really sensitive time, I don't think it's a strategic option. I believe we have to work towards this. How to get rid of extremism? By creating a proper environment for well-being and progress and the quality of life and cooperation, coexistence, and accepting the other, and the rules of justice, of course, not on the expense of others' rights and dignity. There are 3 potential scenarios for ruling in Gaza based on this topic. The real issue is that we have 3 power issues. We also have a fragmented authority, and also we have humanitarian gaps and humanitarian corridors. This could be a mandated transition starting from the U.S. with its details and repercussions, or a stored mandate, or spoilers of pushback in Gaza, which means another cycle of violence. Let's move to the audience. You have 1 minute to comment. This war changed the Palestinians and Israelis and changed the whole region, and both sides will have elections in their countries, whether Israelis or Palestinians, and it's difficult to talk about peace in this moment between Israelis and Palestinians, especially that we have 2 generations in Palestine and Israelis who are not accepting others without having some time to pass to gain more confidence. In Gaza, there is a generation that could be more dangerous to their families than their enemies, because they lost hope and because there is no capabilities for life in this area that was completely destroyed. We have hundreds of thousands injured and killed, and there are also thousands who have disabilities. You will see people in Gaza walking with canes and wheelchairs. We require a lot of effort in order to forgive ourselves and to recover in Gaza. Yes, we saw how Hamas talked about this, about Israelis. Yes, I said two sides have the same issue. Sami Qasimi has a question. Thank you, Yusuf. My question, as we talk about Gaza after the war, is the agreement signed in Gaza, or has it diminished the idea of displacement, or is the scenario of displacing Gazans still on the table? Should the Palestinians be assured, in your opinion, and what are the Egyptian concerns in that regard? So this is to Dr. Abdelmenam Said. Any imagined scenario is possible. You can imagine whatever you want, because migration or expulsion from Gaza is still imagined by some in Israel. What we are doing here is to prepare for a permanent and sustained peace. If there is a permanent peace, we will not have these very extreme scenarios. However, there are some segments in Israel who are even in the government right now. But when Gazans are back to stability and peace, those segments will have a major setback, because this would be through a regional and international and Israeli effort in order to begin a historical settlement after a significant and atrocious war. In 30 seconds, in your opinion, is the displacement threat now going far away, and will Gaza remain divided? The threat of displacement is still there as long as this extreme right-wing government is there, but the danger is voluntary displacement and migration, because the occupation, the Israeli occupation, has tools to prevent rebuilding of Gaza and to prevent humanitarian aid. And this would push Gazans to leave. Jordan and Egypt believe that this is a threat against them, and Palestinians only had the option to stay. But I believe Gaza will not be divided. In 1 year, I'm hoping that things will not remain the same. Dr. Zaid, do you believe that the threat of displacement is gone? And according to the three scenarios that you mentioned, if there were spoilers and problems, this threat would be present again, especially the voluntary displacement as mentioned. I believe that the potential of displacement and migration is not diminished, but there are several scenarios in Gaza and other places. The key principle of war in Gaza is to create a new deterrence model that's called the Gaza Doctrine, and one of the key objectives is to force people to use, whether by coercion or voluntarily. Who can live in Gaza over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years if all the rebuilding and humanitarian aid projects are delayed? Let's link that to Israel's vision of the two-state solution and the relationship with the West Bank. Again, we cannot talk about Gaza in separation of the regional context. The ceasefire project took the discussion from ceasefire to creating a political horizon about the two-state solution. We hope that would clear the vision about security and governance in Gaza without leaving scenarios open for a long time. Thank you so much, my guests. I was honored to moderate this panel. And thank you, Dr. Ibtisam Al-Katbi and the Emirates Policy Center for this excellent forum, which is holding its 12th successful edition. With this panel, we conclude the 12th edition. Thank you to all the audience, whether here or through social media or YouTube.